This video is brought to you by me. For $1 a month, you can support the channel directly and help me keep doing what I love. Thanks for watching and supporting. There was a time when I considered Grand Theft Auto San Andreas one of my favorite games ever, and by far my favorite Grand Theft Auto game. In some ways, it was a game that had me impressed with myself. It was not only my first experience successfully modding a game, but it was also a feat of engineering getting it running on my computer. See, while San Andreas was old by 2009, when I played it, my MacBook was new, and none of the GTA games I wanted to play were on OS X at the time. So through a weird mix of torrenting, software wrapping, YouTube rabbit holing, questionable links, and many prayers to a variety of gods, I managed to get San Andreas running on Mac a year or so before the Trilogy officially came to it. Of course it wasn't perfect. You had to mash the spacebar during startup or the computer might crash, but I got it working, damn it! With DualShock 3 support and all. So while it was a massive triumph for my early high school self, once I got it running, I became engrossed in the game, and by extension so did my friends. Every lunch we would circle up for the latest installment in the lives of Carl C.J. Johnson, his brother Sweet, his sister Kendall, and the sinister Officer Frank Tenpenny, like we were around a campfire roasting marshmallows. Only instead of that, it was a pile of school bags and mediocre personal lunchroom pizza. Again, San Andreas wasn't new when I introduced it to my friend group. By that time, GTA 4 had already been around for a while. But something about San Andreas surprised us even that many years later. Even when you thought you had seen all it had to offer, it would introduce something totally new to the series. This was the first game to introduce RPG elements that would affect CJ in real time. It was the first time in the 3D era that took you out of a city and showed you varied areas like forests and deserts. It introduced plains. San Andreas showed us things that wouldn't come back until at least a decade after the original release, with Grand Theft Auto's return to Los Santos in GTA 5. So in a way, it was the most experimental entry in the series that had a lot of elements stripped out in the next game. When a game leaves an impression like the one San Andreas did on me, it can almost be nerve-wracking to go back to. While the game itself didn't change, unless you count the definitive edition, which did change by getting worse, your experiences and expectations evolved. And since it's been so long, I was really excited to re-experience all of the missions in the story that kept all my friends and I so hooked. In a lot of ways, I was also worried about how the humor has aged, and how Rockstar would handle a story featuring predominantly black and lesser represented communities. And with San Andreas being such a big game, I have a big list of things I want to talk about. First, we will start with the map and talk about how big or small this once gargantuan map feels a decade and a half later. Next, we'll move into the number of missions and show off some of my favorites. And lastly, we'll talk about the story and if Rockstar managed to stick the landing. Back when I played San Andreas for the first time, it felt like it was the biggest map I'd ever seen in a video game. I think it's partially an optical illusion and has more to do with the variety in the map than the actual size of it. As footage from the horrendous definitive edition shows, from a high enough vantage point, San Andreas looks like a perfectly square child's playset. In my opinion though, I think if you fly high enough over a video game world, any single one of them will look small. To me, the important part is how you feel when you're in it. In many ways, San Andreas as an all-encompassing region still feels huge. Like when you start the game and start driving around the first city of Los Santos, it feels bustling and alive. And then you open the map and see just how much more there is to it, and it's still just as shocking to this day. Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City don't have small maps per se, they were just focused on being one thing. Vice City had two major islands, but they were all aiming to represent a single, idealized version of 80s Miami. Liberty City was also much a three-part representation of New York City. The map of San Andreas tries to be many things. Los Santos is a smaller version of Los Angeles, San Fierro is a smaller version of San Francisco, and Las Venturas is a smaller version of Las Vegas. On top of that, there are these sprawling mountains and forests and deserts. Driving between them takes significant time, and it adds to the feeling that this map is huge. However, in classic GTA fashion, what you can access on the map is tied to your progress in the story. Freeways and tunnels are blocked until you surpass different missions. This means that each time you open a new area, you mostly only do missions in that area. You rarely have a reason to go back and visit old cities. This leads to the map feeling a little bit disjointed, like there are multiple pieces stuck together instead of one sprawling world. It's barely a complaint, it just feels like once you finish an area, you're done unless you want to complete every optional objective there. It's a good thing then that the missions you do in each area are some of the most action-packed, fun missions in the entire series. There are 100 missions in this game, which is a lot, but it also means that there are plenty of opportunities to experiment with the newly added stealth and swimming mechanics. Of course, there are a few duds. Looking at you, RC Plane Mission, you unplayable piece of crap. Who allowed this? Who? But for every mediocre mission, there are a handful of really good ones. For instance, Catalina, the main antagonist of Grand Theft Auto 3, shows up, and you perform a string of robberies that consistently go wrong. Other robbers beat you to it, or you have to blow up doors because employees at the racetrack you're robbing lost the key. It's just goofy and fun. There is a cross-country monster truck time trial that you have to finish to get information on CJ's brother. Why did it have to be a monster truck? Who knows? There doesn't seem to be a really good reason, honestly. You break into Area 69 in order to steal a secret military project at the advice of a weed harvester named The Truth. And when you do eventually mow down the entire military base, what do you find hidden deep below the desert? A jetpack. And once you steal it, you can use it wherever and whenever you want. You have to break into a mansion to steal a rapper's book of lyrics in order to boost your untalented friend's career and get him on the map. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is full of blockbuster moments that could be ripped out of a summer action movie, which is even better than watching them because you're the one in charge of doing it. With how much fun this game is, it's almost clashing with the tone of the story, which is really heavy, especially when you compare it to the stories in 3 and Vice City. Before I get into that though, I do want to bring up Rockstar itself and their edge, especially back in the early aughts when this game came out. Rockstar isn't exactly what I would call subtle. Their satires and criticisms of how America works smack you over the head through ads that play on the in-game radio, on billboards, and just the overarching themes in general. In San Andreas, it's no different. I was really taken aback by how blunt some of the caller conversations on the radio were. In other games, there is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek nature to them, but in a few specific examples in San Andreas, they directly went at America's distaste for poor people, going so far to say as nature will take care of them because natural disasters only happen in low-income communities. But no, video games aren't political, right? After playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto over the past month since the Trilogy came to Switch, I feel like Rockstar keeps trying to make strong characters that subvert expectations and stereotypes, but then kneecap their own intentions in the pursuit of retaining an edge. They always grab at the lowest hanging fruit and resort to homophobia and transphobia and continually display casually racist tropes. They do the same things the characters who are made out to be the villains do, which not only takes away from the writing, but it normalizes the behavior for the player. Here's an example of this. Let's look at the opening sequence of the game. Carl Johnson is returning home to San Andreas to attend the funeral for his mother after she was killed in a drive-by shooting. The moment Carl steps out of the airport, his taxi is pulled over by 3 police officers who are part of the LSPD's crash unit. Frank Tenpenny, voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, his crony sidekick Eddie Pulaski, and Jimmy Hernandez, a newer crash officer. We'll get to the importance of crash a little later. Upon frisking Carl with no probable cause, they rob him of his money and send the taxi away, his suitcase still inside, leaving him with essentially nothing but the clothes on his back. As the taxi driver leaves, Pulaski casually insults him by using a slur for someone of Mexican descent, and then turns to apologize to Officer Hernandez for calling him that since Hernandez is also Mexican. Then, after putting Carl in the police car and driving him into an area of Los Santos ruled by the Ballas gang, they produce a pistol that was used to kill another officer and threaten to pin the murder on Carl in the event he refuses to do what Tenpenny orders him to do, despite there being a clear alibi for Carl, given he was on a plane during the murder. This brief introduction tells us a lot about the world we are about to experience. First, gangs are fighting over turf in Los Santos. Second, CJ is no longer associated with a gang since he went to Liberty City to make clean money, but his reputation from before he left means he will be considered a gang member by rival groups and a criminal by law enforcement. Third, the police are a corrupt organization who are willing to throw their weight around to do what they want, convict who they want with false evidence, kill who they want, and ignore the responsibilities of their job to ensure the gangs keep fighting in order to keep them too distracted with each other for anyone to turn their attention to the corrupt systems, keeping tensions high and using gang members as pawns. Later in the story, you meet someone who is in a position of power to do something about Tenpenny and his crimes, but deems it not in his best interest to do anything about it. And lastly, the way Pulaski makes a racial comment toward a character in a taxi with 0 lines in front of another officer of the same race shows how comfortable they are about being racist based on nothing but skin color. It shows that in Los Santos, everyone, including law enforcement, sees skin color before anything else. These 3 officers are made out to be the bad guys right off the bat and for obvious reasons. However, Rockstar manages to dilute this characterization by poorly handling the characters you are supposed to root for. Take for instance Cesar Villalpando, a main character in the story who is introduced as a point of contention between CJ's older brother Sweet and his sister Kendall. Sweet's previous misconceptions on Caesar are all along racial lines of the gangs, and Kendall keeps insisting that Caesar is a good guy who treats her right. CJ is open to giving the guy a chance, and through the game, Caesar does prove to be a good friend to Carl and a good person to Kendall. The problem is that Caesar's character is written in a casually racist way, meaning the character exclaims weird things when he is riding in a car with you going too fast. It degrades this character, like the game reminds you every few minutes that Caesar is from Mexico, lest you forget it for even a second, despite the fact that it has no bearing on the story after CJ meets him and sees his actual character past Sweet's misconceptions. It's just a bizarre choice for Rockstar to make after going out of their way to set the stage for racial bias in the opening cutscene. After you get past the Rockstar bullshit, the story itself is really weighty in a way that Grand Theft Auto stories weren't leading up to San Andreas. Los Santos is built to be a recreation of Los Angeles at the height of racial tensions between neighborhoods and the police. It paints a brutal image of what Los Angeles was like in the 90s, with gangs running the streets, crack ruining the lives of the people who lived there, and a police force who did little but stoke the fires. But if you focus on the main theme of the story, which is corruption in the police department and how deeply it harms the people who are supposed to be protected, it starts to feel like a message that resonates today. After living through the past 10 years and consistently seeing a graphic video or an article about a police officer killing someone, and then seeing another article 8 to 10 months later that says the police officer walked free without any sense of concern to amend protocols to prevent these things from happening again, it's pretty f***ing depressing that this game from 2004 that depicted a social issue from more than a decade prior to that still mirrors the issues we have yet to make much progress with. The overarching story of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas shows you how corrupt the police are and then tries to surprise you when they actually get away with it. I mentioned Crash earlier. Tenpenny and his partners are all members of Crash, the Los Santos Police Department special unit named after the real-life Los Angeles Police Department's highly corrupt, disbanded Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums. Yes, that is a real name. Originally, the unit was supposed to counteract the rising level of gang-related crimes in Los Angeles, but instead turned into a gang itself that operated under the protection of law enforcement. After an officer in the real Crash was arrested on charges, he implicated 70 other officers in various crimes and offenses, including unprovoked shootings and beatings, robberies, stealing and selling drugs, and tampering with evidence. So you can probably imagine why Rockstar chose this unit to be the face of corruption. Right beneath Tenpenny and his provocation of ongoing crime, CJ and Sweet's main concern is cleaning up the influx of crack cocaine in Grove Street and the surrounding area they grew up in, since the police can't be relied on to get the drugs out themselves. Once CJ returns to his home and sees how the people he grew up with have had their dignity and souls stripped away from doing the drug, he vows to get it out of Los Santos. But as Sweet and CJ take to the streets and ascend the ladder from dealers to distributors, they uncover a plot by Tenpenny and the members of the different gangs, including Grove Street families, to push the poison onto the streets to pad their pockets while ripping the streets apart and creating a dependency on the drug. As CJ and Sweet catch up, it becomes immediately apparent that Sweet holds a grudge against CJ for leaving Grove Street to move across the country after their other brother Brian was killed. Sweet considers him someone who runs from his problems instead of facing them. Sweet's entire life is centered around Grove Street and protecting it from the surrounding gangs who are ready to move in. And after Carl left, he felt abandoned, alone, and left to defend their home all by himself. CJ, on the other hand, has left and come back after experiencing an entirely different way of life on the East Coast. I think it's really interesting that the game starts you off in Los Santos fighting for Grove Street, because it lets you experience what Sweet is so attached to and what he has been fighting for while Carl was away. Before the rest of San Andreas is unlocked, Los Santos is all there is, and at first glance it feels really large. But it isn't long before CJ is plucked up by Tenpenny and dropped in the boonies, and you realize how small Los Santos really is and how much there is around it. Sweet never has that moment of discovering the outside world, and leaving his home feels like abandoning his posts and the people who rely on him to lead and defend them. Sweet even goes so far as to say that he will likely die on Grove Street. There is a wall between CJ and Sweet that doesn't ever fully get resolved. While Sweet is in jail, Carl works hard to build security for his family. He opens and operates a garage in San Fierro that he wins from Grand Theft Auto 3's protagonist Claude. He becomes a business partner in a casino and starts pulling in real money. And then he starts to manage the rapper Mad Dog in order to pull his music career out of the gutter. But after doing grunt work for a shaky government agent as a bargaining chip for Sweet's release from prison, Sweet doesn't see these advancements as anything but CJ trying to run away from the job they started to clean up the neighborhood. To me, CJ and Sweet's relationship to each other and Grove Street is one of the most compelling parts of San Andreas. You have two brothers who grew up fighting for their home. Then it all became too much for one of them after their brother died, and he left while the other stayed to continue the fight. Now that their mother was tragically taken under mysterious circumstances, the brother who left comes home to salvage the pieces and realizes there is much more for him elsewhere, while the brother who stayed has no choice but to keep fighting this endless battle, because Grove Street is all he has. It's an interesting dynamic where neither side is wrong, they just value different things. What they each hold sacred is a point of contention that neither one can resolve, because while they are brothers, they are two totally different people, and no amount of arguing is going to change either of their minds. This is all to say that while Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is an old game by today's standards, there is still plenty here that is worth your time. It is still a big game with big ambitions that tells a story of topics that are still issues we need to reckon with, like police brutality and the ongoing opioid epidemic. As games get bigger and cram more onto hard drives and discs, San Andreas' map is going to continue feeling smaller and smaller. But no matter how small the map eventually feels, it's going to be a long time before the missions get any less fun to play, and even longer before the themes at the core of the story get any less relevant. Thank you so much for watching my video, I really appreciate it. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like on it. Have you played San Andreas recently? If so, what did you think? If you want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing, and lastly, if you want to support the channel directly, consider going to my Patreon at the link in the description. For $1 a month, you get early access to all my videos and some extra content you don't get anywhere else. I'd like to take a minute and thank my higher tier patrons, Okayla, Just Jessica, 8-Bit Jesus, Andrew Elmore, and Andrew Lang. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.